Today we'll be talking about the variety of ways in which local governments can support electric vehicle infrastructure development. First, let's touch on the high-level basics with regard to the different types of EV chargers available today. There are three different types of charging infrastructure. Level 1 is the slowest method and is sufficient for drivers who charge overnight and travel 30 to 40 miles per day. All plug-in electric vehicles come with a cable that can be plugged into a standard wall outlet with no equipment installation required. Level 1 works well at home, at the workplace, or in any place or situation where the driver will have sufficient time to charge. However, it is not the best choice for fleet applications due to the longer charging time. Level 1 charging adds about 3.5 to 6.5 miles of driving range per hour of charging time. Level 2 charging is the most common for fleet applications. This level is considerably faster, but requires the installation of Level 2 electric vehicle supply equipment, or EVSE. This installation requires a dedicated 240 volt or 208 volt electrical circuit, similar to what is required for a clothes dryer. The third type of electric vehicle charging infrastructure is direct current or DC fast charging, which provides the fastest recharge. It requires a 480 volt connection, making it unsuitable for home use. Not every electric car model is equipped for DC fast charging. Most plug-in hybrid electric vehicles are not able to be charged via DC fast chargers. Stations offering DC fast charging are found in shopping centers and often along major travel corridors, allowing drivers to charge up quickly and take longer trips. While there are a number of options for charging infrastructure to be installed in parking lots, at service stations, parks, or at other public or commercially owned property, the vast majority of charging is done at the home. Charging a battery electric car can be done at home using a standard 120 volt or 240 volt house plug, meaning that electric vehicle owners can charge up when their car is at home, either via trickle charging with a standard outlet or at level 2 speed charging with some electrical upgrades and additional equipment. For more information on each of the different levels of charging, the more technical aspects, and their most common use cases, be sure to check out the first chapter of this Local Government Action Playbook video series. For now, let's dive into some of the primary ways that local governments can support infrastructure development in their jurisdictions. Local governments have the option to support vehicle electrification and adoption of zero-emission vehicles by operating and maintaining a publicly accessible network of charging stations. Here in Tennessee, Metro Nashville has been recognized as one of the leading cities in the state to offer free electric vehicle charging for employees and the public. The city's Department of General Services manages numerous electric vehicle charging ports, including the one behind me, most of which are available for public use free of charge. The city also installs charging stations at each new General Services facility that is constructed, supporting the LEED certification process and encouraging EV adoption. The department also adds new EV stations at existing facilities where possible. As part of Metro Nashville's goal to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050, the city has plans to install many new stations and introduce new all-electric vehicles to its fleet in the coming years. Elsewhere in Tennessee, the cities of Knoxville and Chattanooga have also supported municipally owned charging. In partnership with the Knoxville Utilities Board and the Chattanooga Area Regional Transportation Authority, the cities have introduced a network of stations that provides charging for mixed fleet, employee, and public use. Government-owned charging helps address one of the major barriers to EV ownership and adoption, a lack of visible and accessible charging infrastructure, which in turn can contribute to range anxiety for consumers. By taking advantage of any incentives and grants offered by the federal government, state government, or utility partners to help cover the costs of installation and operation, municipalities can be a leader in addressing this problem. Municipalities can also encourage the installation of charging infrastructure at commercial properties and multifamily residences through property tax exemptions. In addition to supporting publicly accessible and community charging projects, municipalities can help their communities transition to EVs and set an example by supporting workplace charging for its own employees. Outside of the home, the second most frequented parking location is the workplace. Providing access to charging at the workplace encourages employees who do not have access to residential charging to make the transition to an EV. When it comes to actually installing electric vehicle charging equipment, there are a number of costs to consider, particularly when making the decision on location, charger type, the number of stations and plugs, and more. The costs associated with installing and operating charging stations can vary widely, depending on the unit features, site location, available electrical capacity, and labor costs. It's difficult to compare or predict costs since actual costs of a given project will depend on the specific needs and constraints of the station and its users. However, we will use this section to describe the different factors at play when planning for installation. The costs associated with owning and operating EVSE include the cost of the charging unit hardware, which may include the main unit as well as optional equipment such as a card reader, installation costs, which may include contractor labor and materials for connecting the unit to the electrical service, such as panel work, trenching, boring, and repaving, new electrical service or upgrades such as additional transformers, meeting Americans with Disabilities Act or ADA requirements, traffic protection, signage, and lighting. Costs tied to permitting and inspection, as well as engineering and design, additional capital costs, which may include hardware, extended warranties, repair labor warranties, and land or parking space purchase or lease, and operation and maintenance costs, including electricity consumption and demand charges, networking fees, billing transaction costs, preventative and corrective maintenance of the charging unit, and both scheduled and unscheduled repairs. Certain key decisions can play a major role in determining the cost of charging infrastructure for public use. First and foremost is the charging level. Public charging is typically made up of a mix of level 2 and DC fast charging units, although level 1 units may make sense for some sites. The second consideration is the desired features of the units to be installed. Some public charging providers may require point of service and billing capabilities to charge consumers for the electricity. Other public charging providers may not need these features because they incorporate the charging service into a parking fee or provide free charging. Finally, there's location. Where a charging station is located and how its use is promoted can greatly influence the cost. Permitting, proximity to electrical service, needed electrical upgrades, desired charging station visibility and signage, advertising for the station or the full charging network, and anti-vandalism measures will influence the ultimate cost. The ways in which all of the factors and decisions described influence costs are eye-opening. A report from the U.S. Department of Energy found that equipment and installation costs for level 2 charging can range from about $1,000 for the most basic unit and installation circumstances to up to nearly $20,000 for more complex equipment with complicated installation and site needs. With all of this in mind, there are a number of ways that a municipality can minimize the costs associated with unit installation. Choose the unit with the minimum level of features needed. Choose a wall-mounted unit if possible, so that trenching or boring is not needed. Choose a dual port unit to minimize installation costs per charge port. Determine the electrical load available at your site and choose the quantity and level of charging units to fit within that available electrical capacity. Place the unit close to existing electrical service to minimize the need for trenching, boring, and the cost of potential electrical upgrades. Instead of locating the charger at a highly visible parking spot a great distance from the electrical panel, use signage to direct EV drivers to the unit. Choose a location that already has space on the electrical panel with a dedicated circuit. Work with the local utility early in the planning stages to discuss electricity consumption and demand charges, as well as electrical service needs. Consider the quantity and location of charging that will be planned for installation in the long term when installing the first unit. Upgrade the electrical service for anticipated long-term charging load and run conduit to the anticipated future locations. This will minimize the cost of installing future units. Consider the electrical infrastructure for charging stations when building a new building or facility. It is less expensive to install extra panels and conduit capacity during initial construction than to modify a site later. Outside of direct installation of publicly available charging infrastructure and promotion of EVs through use in its own fleet, local governments can pursue a number of other policy-driven mechanisms to promote clean transportation and electric vehicle infrastructure development. As cities look to capitalize on the opportunity that EVs can bring, from lower maintenance costs for consumers to better air quality for residents, it's important to lay the groundwork for communities to become EV ready. Cities have tremendous influence over how and where infrastructure is built and can serve as a critical and necessary partner in the market transformation effort to expand the EV presence and meet emissions goals. Municipalities need to be EV ready in policy, regulation, capital improvements, and in planning for public and private infrastructure. The following are 5 opportunity areas for an EV-ready city. Policy and planning. Acknowledge EV benefits and support development of charging infrastructure. Prioritizing EV use and development of EV charging infrastructure in a comprehensive plan or master plan enables EV market transformation and city decision-making on EV-supportive programs and regulations. Regulation. Implement development standards and regulations that enable EV use. Adopting ordinances that support the use of EVs and that incorporate EV charging in development and redevelopment is a critical step in becoming an EV-ready community. In particular, parking standards provide a unique opportunity to create EV-ready buildings and commercial facilities. Multifamily housing, commercial facilities, and mixed-use development can be designed to accommodate the transition to EVs and capture a variety of societal benefits. Administration. Create transparent and predictable EV permitting processes. Standardized permitting processes that directly address charging allow contractors and city staff to know exactly what information and documentation is needed to install charging. Having a standardized, consistent permitting process reduces time spent on acquiring permits and conducting inspections for both developers and city staff. Permitting processes may need to be updated to best reflect charging industry best practices. Additionally, if a permitting fee is assessed, it should cover the cost of the local government review and inspection costs. Programs. Develop public programs to overcome market barriers. Local governments regularly create and manage programs to remove market barriers or mitigate for market failure that prevents desired private sector development. These same tools can be applied to the encouragement of EV infrastructure development in public spaces where such development would not otherwise occur. The simplest actions are to enable EV use by installing public chargers at public buildings or in public spaces where the local government has direct ownership and authority. More complex tools include economic development programs such as incentives or financing for desired development, or the assembling of financial or land resources that will achieve desired private sector investment. Leadership. Demonstrate EV viability in public fleets and facilities. Cities can boost EV adoption in the private sector by demonstrating how EVs work in their own fleets. By incorporating more EVs into their fleets, cities save money over the life of the vehicle, reduce air pollution, and increase energy independence. More importantly, however, integrating EVs into public fleets demonstrates the market readiness of EVs. One notable example in the Southeast of a major make-ready policy is the City of Orlando's passage of Ordinance 2021-47, which took effect at the start of 2022, in order to ensure that the city's projected EV charging needs are met while providing equitable access to EV charging infrastructure throughout the city. The ordinance will require 20% of multi-unit parking spaces and 10% of non-residential parking spaces to be EV capable, requiring new buildings to provide increased electrical capacity and conduit for future charging station installations, thereby reducing charging station installation cost barriers by more than 75% and increasing the likelihood of access to home charging where most charging occurs. In addition to increasing access to charging among the public, cities can promote a culture of EV ownership among its own employees with the installation of charging at the workplace. With proper workplace charging implementation, cities can increase the convenience and affordability of driving electric for their employees. Providing access to workplace charging infrastructure can help a city enhance its image as sustainable and environmentally conscious. Offering free or low-cost workplace charging to employees incentivizes EV adoption and usage while demonstrating an interest in employees' transportation needs. Workplace charging also allows the city to advance a sustainability goal, such as emissions reductions, and cities interested in leadership in energy and environmental design or LEED certification can utilize EV charging stations and/or EV-ready construction to earn points towards certification. The expansion of workplace charging has been shown to increase EV ownership, which benefits local communities through reduced transportation-related emissions and improved air quality. In fact, the availability of workplace charging is the third most significant driver of EV adoption behind vehicle model availability and publicly available DC fast charging. In Tennessee, the transportation sector is responsible for the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel consumption. It's also the largest source of several criteria air pollutants like nitrogen oxides. Increased adoption of EVs, which have zero tailpipe emissions, can therefore stand to benefit local communities by improving local air quality, and bettering public health outcomes. Municipalities and other public entities across the state have introduced charging at the workplace for employees. This includes Metro Nashville Government, the Chattanooga Area Regional Transportation Authority, Knoxville Utilities Board, Tennessee Valley Authority, Oak Ridge National Lab, and more. Drive Electric Tennessee has developed and released a workplace charging best practices guide to help employers understand the considerations for workplace charging and meet charging goals and needs, as well as to highlight the efforts of employers across the state that are promoting clean transportation and employee EV adoption within their organizations. Outside of the resources developed by Drive Electric Tennessee, there are a number of toolkits and guides available to decision makers and city governments to advance their efforts towards zero-emission transportation at the municipal level. The City of Atlanta EV Readiness Workbook offers guidance on educational resources, an EV equipment installation guide, a signage guide, and permitting guidelines. The Go EV City Policy Toolkit is a catalog of local policies, strategies, and programs designed to advance the transition to EVs. The toolkit takes a holistic approach to transportation electrification with specific policy recommendations for public transit, municipal fleets, taxis, ride-hail services, and personal car ownership tools that have been implemented in cities, counties, states, and utilities across the country. The Greening the Grid EV Toolkit includes resources that have been expertly curated and annotated to assist in navigating key topics related to EVs. The EV Toolkit offers information and guidance materials to support the safe, effective, and accelerated deployment of EVs. Frontiers Group's An Electric Vehicle Toolkit for local governments includes tools and policies that leading cities have adopted to make it easier to buy and own an EV. It includes the steps local governments around the country can take to make the switch to clean electric vehicles an easier choice for everyone. Finally, Electrify New York's EV Municipal Toolkit shows how local governments across the country are leading the way in facilitating the transition to a clean electric transportation future. The aim of this toolkit is to help local leaders understand and uncover the opportunities available to get municipalities on the path to electrify municipal fleets, public transit, and to help drive personal public investments in EVs through providing the necessary EV infrastructure.